During those times where you were taking care of your brother, what values would you say that are still instilled in you today?
Probably the biggest one is drugs destroy dreams. She had thyroid cancer when she was 19, had to have her thyroid removed. Since then, put us both into a deep dive into hell. The next big wars aren't going to be fought over what they're usually fought over. It's going to be fought over water. Until we fix the problems that are happening with Mother Earth's natural ecological system, we're gonna have a real struggle for water.
Welcome back to another episode of the Adaptive Leaders Podcast. Today I have a special guest. This guest was actually one of our first sponsors last week in last week's episode, so I am grateful to have him on. We're excited to dive in and get to know him a little better. Welcome to the podcast, Walter Hoggan.
How you doing, brother?
Good, bro. So Walter, you're a family man. You are the owner of Water and Wellness. You are a husband, a dad. What other things do you enjoy doing?
Love spending time with my family. Got to take the day off yesterday, hang out with my kids, play in the little kiddie pool and hang out. Love golfing, playing basketball, climbing, just getting outdoors, going on hikes. Spending as much time with the family is really the number one thing, though. The
value that you have around family, where did you get that from?
So I had two sets of grandparents growing up that pretty much raised me. And that was, we used to get together at the Hoggan parties every Sunday without fail. And it was like the highlight of my childhood, just growing up with my cousins, getting to play all the time, and spending as much time with family as possible.
Talking about your childhood, what memories stick out? Like what, I feel like there's core memories that really define people, right? From childhood to adolescence to teenage to early adulthood. Are there any memories that really defined who you are today?
I would really have to attribute to my Opa, Harold. He was...
Sorry, what's Opa?
Opa is grandpa in German.
Cool.
And he was just an inspiration to everyone around him. He had a really rough childhood, grew up post-World War II. His dad was a photographer for the German army and was prisoner of war after. And
his dad. So your great-grandpa.
Yep.
Wow.
And so, long story short, his mom was an alcoholic, and so she put him and his sister out on the streets to basically beg for food and money and provide for the family when he was like 6 years old. And so he had a really tough childhood, and he ended up becoming a policeman in East Germany and helped get people across to the west side and helped get his sister across. And then he eventually, when he was 20 years old, got to the West German side and then moved to Utah, where he met my grandma. And he was definitely rough around the edges when he got here. And one day with my grandma just said, "You either need to change or we can't do this anymore." And he broke down, and he was able to change his ways. And he was just the kindest, most generous person you'd ever meet. And he always had stories to tell. And he was just a joy to be around.
What was one of your, do you have any like favorite stories that he'd tell you as a kid?
I feel like his stories about, his childhood, and in particular, like one where he was stealing apples off the back of a wagon, and the guy gave him some lashings, caught him doing it. And so but then he got the guy back and, ended up, this isn't necessarily a good thing, but he ended up like burning the wagon or something.
He got his payback.
Yeah, he got his payback.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you've mentioned a few times your grandpa, at least around me.
Yep.
And you've mentioned before that you were raised by your grandpa or your grandparents.
Yep.
What was the reason for that? What were your parents?
My parents were both entrepreneurs. My dad started the water store back in 1996. And so he was constantly busy with that, working 60, 70 hours a week. My mom, same thing. She was an esthetician. Then she also had a couple other businesses on the side. And so they were both just constantly working. And so I'd go to one set of grandparents Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the other set Tuesday, Thursday.
Wow.
Pick me up from school. I'd get,
Yeah.
that was like the best, because I'd just get home and or get, they'd pick me up. I'd go to their place. They'd always have candy and
Oh,
food ready.
So you're spoiled then.
I was definitely spoiled.
That's awesome. So I'm thinking about your grandpa's generation.
Yep.
Would they be considered the greatest generation, or what was that demographic considered? Have you guys heard of that before? It's like the greatest generation was like the generation right after World War II.
Yep.
Like what America was built on.
Yep.
Right. What things did you learn from your Opa that did you learn, or did you maybe, were there character traits that he taught you, or certain things that you extracted from him raising you, or your grandparents raising you?
Biggest thing is hard work.
Mm-hmm.
He never stopped working up until the time he died. He loved being at the water store, helping customers, making people smile, and also another big thing is he'd always say life's too short. Don't sweat the small stuff. And he always said, like, I was always really nervous about going, like when he'd help me get my car fixed and being like, introducing myself to people, I'd be like, oh, hey, how's it going? He'd be like, hey, how you doing?
Right.
He was super outgoing. And I feel like you really need to be that way in order to be successful. You can't be afraid, and you got to really be able to just be yourself, like you've been talking about. Yeah,
just be authentic. It's like it's counterintuitive too, because it seems like people are taught, I guess maybe they're not taught this, but in general, like you want to have a public facing persona.
Yeah.
And then you have a more private persona, and then you have the aspects of you that virtually nobody knows about, right?
Yep.
And that's not me defining that. I learned that from like a ex-CIA agent or something. He talks about like breaking down people and suspects. But when you are trying to, I guess, connect or build a business or be more public facing like this, like, and you can just be yourself with quirks and everything, like not try to hide anything. It just humanizes you, makes you more relatable. And sometimes people want to get on their high horse and like, oh, I'm on a podcast episode, like I'm being interviewed, I'm awesome. So I'm going to remind people how awesome I am. It's just be yourself. It'll go a long way. So generally when I'm like learning about people, I know there's generally two truths when you're uncovering values. One that a lot of people know about. I'll ask you, what were some of the most happiest times in your childhood, right? And then you can tell me those stories, and then we can kind of extract, that's why you're a generous person. That's why you love family. That's why you are happy or positive, right? But then there's another part that I don't think a lot of people understand or know about, but maybe they do, maybe I'm assuming. But the other part of, having strong values is, what were the aspects of your life or your early, upbringing that wasn't positive, that was negative? What were the times where you were maybe your saddest? And this is kind of interesting when you're talking about it and saying it out loud, because you can also extract values that you picked up because of those moments. And that's not readily apparent, right?
Yep.
So for an example, I am a strong advocate for diversity and inclusiveness. And that came from an upbringing of not being included and being picked on for the color of my skin or because my last name is Sanchez, right? And so that value is very strong within me because of my upbringing and certain things that I went through, right?
Yep.
Is there anything like that for you? Are there any things that you can like extract from, some moments where you're like, this is something that is going to define me for the rest of my life?
Yeah. One thing in particular is when my brother was 9 years older than me, Archie, and he struggled with addiction from a young age. And my parents were both super busy. And so when he was really struggling, when I was like 10 years old, just after he'd gotten out of high school, maybe I was a little older because he'd moved back at that point, and he had to come live with us, and he was, trying to get sober, and I was having to be basically his caretaker or look after him while he was struggling. And it really taught me a lot about I always looked up to my brother, and I thought he was, just none of that would ever happen to him. And it really taught me a lot about how even when you're at your best, sometimes things just don't work out as planned. And he still, he struggled with it for years up until 5 years ago. And that was when he hit his rock bottom, and he went to the Beacon House of San Pedro in California, and it was a 2-year program. We didn't really get to talk to him for 2 years. And it changed his life. He was able to, he's been sober for 5 years now, and he went from just working at the Beacon House and being a counselor to being the CEO of the Beacon House now.
Wow.
And he's just absolutely crushing it now.
Yeah. So
it's been that was one thing is, even like, you've seen the Robin Williams quote, you never know what people are really going through, so not trying to take things personal when people, even when you're driving, I don't know if you've seen that show Beef recently, but it's like, it's crazy how things can escalate, when you're not really considering where the other person's at.
No, what happened in that show?
It's basically they get in a road rage fight, and then like it just escalates to the point where like they're really hurting each other. Oh, shit. And like in their real life world.
Oh wait, so is it like a what type of show is it? It's like it's reality TV or what?
It's a Netflix
gotcha.
Series. Okay. Yeah, it's a fantasy.
Oh yes, the one with the Asian, the two Asian, like the Asian lady, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
I saw that first that first episode. We saw it in Vegas for Mitch's podcast. You remember that show?
She flips him off.
Yeah. It escalates immediately. And you're like, whoa.
Holy shit.
He goes and pisses in her house.
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. Okay, so, during those times where you were supporting and taking care of your brother and making, like, looking out for him, right?
Yep.
What did you pull out from those? Like, what values would you say that are still instilled in you today that you pulled from those?
Probably the biggest one is drugs destroy dreams.
Ooh.
And that's, you see it all the time. We live in a world of addiction. What's that book? The problem with, what is it? It's the,
so what does it talk about?
It just talks about how like we live in the age of enjoyment, and there's always got to be something that we're, tuning into, and whether it be drugs or media, TV shows, there's always got to be something. And I feel like people just don't take the time to step back and really just live in the moment. Even in a lot of our phones are the biggest one.
Oh yeah.
I see it all the time. Like even with myself, with my kids, that's something I struggle with big time, is putting that damn thing down and really being in the moment with my kids.
Yeah, that's not talked about enough, because there really is an addictive quality to social media and smartphones and everything. So yeah, it's tough, but the fact that you're aware means that you can change and hopefully get a grip on that. I don't see that being a problem for you. It's like you don't even have enough time to like we're operating this business, right?
Yep.
Imagine we walk in, Walter just scrolling on social media. Yeah. Like, welcome to Walter Wellness. Oh man,
that would
definitely change the culture of the whole company. What's your opinion on that whole industry, right? Like, since your brother's a CEO of this, what is it called?
The Beacon House.
The Beacon House. Have you guys had conversations about, is it like a fundamental disability? Is that your opinion? Where it's like a literal mental dysfunction, and that you inherit it, or you have that trait, or you don't? Or do you see it as another school of thought is it's a coping mechanism for whatever trauma that you've dealt with in your life, and that it is curable and it is not inherent? Like, what is your school of thought?
After watching my brother, I feel like it's probably a combination of the two. I feel like there's epigenetics involved. I even feel that in myself with like drinking, and there could be those precursors in our DNA that, make us more susceptible to being addicts. However, I feel like they're triggered through trauma, and that with my brother, he had some traumatic stuff happen when he was a child, and he believes that's what triggered it. And now that the biggest thing they work on at the Beacon House is is they do group therapy, and then they do the private therapy where you're able to really get down to the root cause of what's causing your addiction. And for my brother, he was able to see, maybe certain things with my parents and with, what happened with some people that shouldn't have happened. And really just processing those things and learning healthier coping mechanisms, and, through treatment, through AA, through his group, and having a sponsor, having healthy people and positive influences in your life to help you learn and grow out of those things. It's definitely not something that can be fixed with a Band-Aid fix.
Right.
And that's the problem with most treatment centers is they're short, they cost a lot of money, and they never get down to the root cause of what's really going on. And with Archie, he tried to do all the Band-Aid fixes and never worked. And it really took a good chunk of time for him to figure out what was really going on. Yeah,
man, that whole, those guys are heroes. Anyone that's working in that field and doing that's God's work for sure.
Yeah.
Because that is a tough place to see family members and parents and brothers and nephews and, you know what I mean? Just people in those positions.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's really tough. We kind of went into both camps. You're like, it could be both. What are your thoughts with one of the things that I've noticed? One of my brothers went through AA and he's been sober for 3 years, right?
Yep.
And so one of the things that, and again, I want your take on it. Again, neither of us are experts. Do your own research. This isn't advice or this isn't professional advice or anything. But what's your take on that industry with the thought that, I'll see people that haven't drank for 20 years and say I'm sober for 20 years, which I feel like implicitly in that statement is one of disempowerment. Does that make sense?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So how does one acknowledge the success of not going back to whatever substance, but at the same time stay empowered? Is it acknowledging that you've been sober for 20 years, or is there a way to empower them and be like, hey, congratulations, you've done this, but you're not sober, you just are now this person? The one, I guess, if I did have an issue with some of these rehabilitation programs, it's the inherent disempowerment that the person has to acknowledge that they are less than, that they need help. And I think that's okay for a phase. But when you hold on to that for too long, it becomes a personal trait and it becomes a character trait. And so then you live your life disempowered. You don't live your life with your chest out, head up. You live your life more contracted and more like, hey, I'm just kind of getting by. I'm just happy that I don't drink anymore.
There's a book, Atomic Habits.
Yep.
And it talks about that, where you identify as when you're trying to make a new habit, you need to learn to identify with I don't smoke, not I quit smoking, X amount of time ago. And really, and that's the one thing I struggle with AA is hey, my name is Walter Hoggan, I'm an alcoholic. I feel like stating that puts it out into the, into reality instead of being like, I don't drink anymore, I'm not an alcoholic, and really not identifying with those things is where the real magic happens.
Right.
I understand why they do it, in the responsibility and accountability side of things. I do feel like it can be a double-edged sword though, for sure.
Yeah. I think that's the right word for it. You inherited, or you kind of stepped in to Water Wellness at a fairly young age.
Yep.
So take me through your high school years. Did you see yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you see yourself as a business owner? What did you want to do? Because you started working there at 19, 20?
So I started working there when I was 12.
Okay, 12.
Yeah.
But when did you take over the business?
I took over the business 7 years ago, so I was 23.
Okay, so you're 23.
Yeah.
Okay. For some reason, I thought you were 19.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're 23 years old. From the let's say 17 to 20 years old, or in those years where you're trying to figure out what you're going to do.
Yep.
Was that ever was that always the thought for you?
When I was a kid, I always, potentially saw myself owning the water store.
Okay.
I didn't know how it would work out. But it was definitely, I always wanted to be a part of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I still went to college though, still did, some business courses and explored a little bit just to see. And then when the time came with my dad, he was moving up to Oregon to do a quality control lab for hemp and cannabis.
Mm-hmm.
And, he was pretty much, there was no way he was going to be able to do both.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was perfect timing. And I was hungry and ready to take over. And it worked out just perfectly. And he was gracious enough to just give it to me.
Okay. Is there any other part of you that wanted to explore anything else besides the water and wellness store?
There was. I mean, I always had a dream of being like a pro golfer. When I was a kid, I was like,
okay,
go to the NBA, but I'm only 6 foot tall and not very athletically gifted. So, I mean, it was more like sports stuff, which was more of a pipe dream for me because unless it was a miracle,
Yeah. Well, when did you come to that realization? Like, oh, this is a pipe dream.
Probably when I was 16.
Okay. Did that come from you? Like, was that an internal to external thought, or was that an external to internal thought? Did other people say you don't have a shot?
More internal.
Okay.
I mean, maybe I could have done something in golf,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so hard. It's so competitive, and it's more. I like doing it more for fun.
Yeah.
And
you still play golf today?
I still play golf.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Not very well, but
probably better than everybody in this room by a long shot. You golf?
I've golfed one time when I was 17.
Yeah, my wife Shelly, she golfs. She was on the high school golf team.
Oh, cool.
She's so good. I'm like, you're way too good at this. And she doesn't play at all, and we went to Top Golf, and she just smoked me. I'm like, wow,
dang it.
This is really a technical sport. I was pissed. I was just swinging for the fences the entire time. What's going on? So you have a athletic background, right? You played a lot of sports growing up.
Yeah.
Your first dream, was it NBA or PGA?
Probably NBA.
Okay, so
I love
NBA.
basketball.
Did you play junior jazz?
Oh yeah.
Let's go.
Ward ball.
Did you ward ball? Yeah. Did you play on the high school team?
I made the team and then I quit.
Okay.
Started getting into partying.
So let's talk about that. The contrast of your past self, your party self,
Yeah.
and then where you are currently today. What were those years like?
It started out, when I was 16, just fooling around with cannabis,
Mm-hmm.
and then started to do mushrooms, and then drinking was never really my thing.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're going to a party, it was just one of those things. I started drinking not heavily, but pretty much every weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
What did that lead you to? Like that phase? How old were you at this time?
I started when I was 16, probably till I was 21.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a few years, 5 years of partying and
Yep.
getting more and more into that scene.
Yep.
What did your life look like? Say the epitome of that.
It was probably a mess. I definitely was struggling financially, not on my A game, always showing up late to work, not being super productive. And it was a struggle for sure.
What transitioned you out of that phase?
Probably the biggest thing is when my daughter was born. Just realizing, okay, it's not all about me anymore. It's time to step up and be a man and really focus on what I need to do in order to provide for her and her future, and make myself successful to, help our family.
How do you teach that to other people? Because I've been thinking a lot about that. The generally what happens, right? The part of maturing is self-transcendence, where
Yep.
you have to go from this narcissistic, and not bad narcissistic in a bad way. Narcissistic as you're only considering your needs, yourself, your wants. You have to transcend that to start considering other people's needs, your kids' needs, their wants, their desires, their health. It can't happen outside of parenthood. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's never going to be a time where you're going to love something more than you love yourself, besides when you have kids. And also I'm very conscious that it doesn't happen for every parent either too.
Yeah.
Right? That doesn't mean just because you have kids doesn't mean you go through this phase, because that's very similar to me. My life did a complete 180 the moment that I found out that I was going to be having my firstborn, right? And it was exactly that check. All right, got to stop this, X, Y, Z, all of the things that I was doing. Really crazy shit too. Like
Yeah.
not like like really wild. How do you teach that to the young entrepreneur, the young up and coming entrepreneur, somebody that is there a way to teach it? Like I'm like, go have a kid. Like, obviously that's not your answer, but it's like
that. I mean, that is a tough one. I feel like without my children, I wouldn't be nearly as motivated and feel that urge to really get after it. If you don't have kids, I feel like it's got to come from within somehow. And reading books like Atomic Habits, listening to podcasts. Like, I don't know if you listen to Dr. Andrew Huberman. He's got so many awesome ways to really make changes in your life. And one thing I've been doing recently is cold therapy, and like really trying to push past those walls in my head. Like, I do not want to be in this,
What's your longest time on that?
Oh, I'm still a lightweight. I'm like 3 minutes.
Let's go. It's better than half the people that are watching this. They do it a minute. So
Lehigh Dominguez, who fought this last weekend, we have a cold plunge at the store now.
Nice.
16 minutes.
What? Was he able to get out and like move?
I know. I was like, so he's gonna. He was freezing after though.
You definitely have to have somebody there when you're doing it, because
For
like,
sure.
worst case scenarios, you literally can drown.
That's my wife was saying.
Yeah, you're just like, I'm drowning. So it's important that people are there if you're gonna try to test it like that. Like, okay, I can't move. All right, we'll pick you.
We got you.
So continue on that string of thought that you're talking about. Reading books, listening to podcasts.
Just pushing yourself in ways that you don't necessarily want to. Even coming to like you were saying with that post World War II generation that really, they had to deal with so much crap and they just pushed through. And it's like the hard times make strong men, weak times make soft men. And I feel like, we kind of live in that society today where it's we're not really challenged. I mean, some people, I don't want to take for granted some people's struggles, because obviously I live a more an easier life than a lot of people, and like compared to other countries where like it's a struggle every day. But for the average Joe here in America, I feel like pushing past those preconceived limits we put on ourselves, where they get that fire inside, is hard to say. Like, what's going to push them to even pursue those things? Because even I still struggle with, pushing past certain things. Like, I know I should read every night, but I want to watch beef, or I want to watch this TV show. And, it's a struggle. I mean, I don't feel like anyone's ever going to be perfect at it.
No.
If you're aware of it though, and you're able to really, hopefully take the necessary steps and listen to the right people, read the right books, hopefully it's a progression over time.
So your advice to the people who are seeking purpose, seeking to be motivated or be more self-disciplined is do more hard shit.
Yeah.
Challenge yourself, get out of your comfort zone, and then do that consistently. And that'll keep you motivated, or that'll at least give you the self-discipline to do the things necessary to get to whatever you want.
Even with climbing recently, I started lead climbing with my friends, and I was listening to Huberman about his shark experience and how like you can't let that fear control you. And he went back and did it again. And with climbing, I've really been keeping that in mind lately. And it's like, okay, I don't want to do this, but I'm gonna do it.
So when you're lead climbing, have you gone like out in on a mountainside and done that?
I've done it with my friends. They are the experts though. So like they do all the leading to start and the cleaning. I'm going on Monday actually with my buddy Matt, and his friend's going to teach us, how to lead properly outdoors and clean the route after.
Nice.
The cleaning's the scariest part because it's like you're self-belaying down, crabbing the clips is scary as hell.
Why do they do that? Clean it? Like that's just like a etiquette thing?
The cleaning, so it's basically like, so whoever leads it is setting the clips in, and then the cleaning is where you clean your clips up on the way down.
I'm imagining literally like cleaning
like
around.
brushing them.
Okay, so you're just talking. Okay, you're talking about that function. Gotcha. What got you involved in that? Climbing. How long you been climbing?
My wife got me climbing when I was like 18.
Okay.
And I've always had a terrible fear of heights. Like when my grandpa took me to Angel's Landing when I was a kid, I was in 7th grade, and I went with my cousin, my dad, and my grandpa, and we got to the chain part, and I couldn't do it. My grandpa was pissed. He was like, don't be whatever. And I was like, good luck. I'll see you guys when you get back.
He let you punk out. Like, he was just like, all right, see you later.
You're like, whatever.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
So
that's good. Otherwise, it probably would have scarred you for life. You probably wouldn't have picked up climbing if he, like, forced you to do this.
I still used to have bad dreams, like falling off a cliff like that,
Wow, yeah.
And I don't know where that comes from. And I'm really trying to push past that in climbing now.
Mm-hmm.
And even still, like, when I've been outside a few times, I'm like shaking, like, and for most people, it's not that way. They love it. And it's like, they get those endorphins flowing, the catecholamines are freaking just raging. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've done bouldering a few times. I don't know. I like bouldering more than I like to just climb.
Bouldering's fun.
It's fun. Yeah. But I guess also it could be a height thing. It's like, you don't go too high. You just like get harder and harder.
Yeah.
V1, V2, V3, V4. I think the most I've ever done was a V5. I think that's
Dang.
What, is that middle?
Yeah, I think it's like right in the middle.
Yeah, like a V8, or is that the highest, or like V10?
I think it goes up like V13.
Oh, okay, yeah. V5 sounds about right. I guess that's about my wheelhouse. I think as you keep talking and bringing in OPA, I don't think a lot of people know this, but these are stats I'm fascinated by because my parents are immigrants. So your OPA was an immigrant, right?
Yep.
My parents are immigrants, and I see how hard they work. And a lot of when you ask them why they work so hard, it's always in context to like they didn't have anything growing up. Their parents died when they were young. My mom was raised by nuns. My dad was raised by an abusive alcoholic uncle. Like they slept on dirt floors. Like, the contrast of living compared to what it's like living in this country was what motivated them to still to this day. Jay's met my dad. Like, he still operates his own business. He still wakes up earlier than most 18 to 25 year olds. He's still in the office earlier, leaves the office later than everybody else. And he's been doing it for 35 years, probably longer. That's just how long this business has been in business. Right. And so that's teeing up this stat, which is fascinating to me. I think you're going to find this fascinating. 40% of Fortune 500 companies were founded by or ran by immigrants, or first gen or second gen. 40% Fortune 500 companies. Fortune 100 companies, so the top 100 of that 500, 50% of them were founded and owned by first gen or second gen immigrants.
Dang.
Right. So there's a real, like, the highest performers, there's a real psychology to back what you were saying earlier. There's a real nuance of adversity, challenge, the hermetic response. The more you go through, the more utility, the more skill sets, the more valuable you become as a person. Right.
That makes sense.
So it's crazy. But I was like, you're going to find that fascinating because it sounds, like I said, like the World War II generation, the greatest generation in American history is what they're considered. Like, people in that era, the men in that era, they're just built different. Right. And you look back at the profile of men, like 60-year-old men, or, like grandpas have higher testosterone than the 18 and 20-year-olds now. It's like by 50%.
Which is
crazy. So there is something there to what you're saying earlier, and it's cool to see that you were influenced so much by your grandfather in that way. So that leads perfectly into Water and Wellness. This company, I've noticed and I've observed, dealing with dozens of companies in Utah Valley, Utah County, Salt Lake County. I've noticed that it has a very deep love. Like, your customers just are raving fans. You got a lot of raving fans. It's very prominent. If you follow Water and Wellness on social media, it just seems like once you come across you guys, you're lifelong customers.
Yep.
Let's take it to the founding of that company. Why Water and Wellness? Why did your father found this company?
My dad he was a big soda drinker for years and years. Mm-hmm. And in 1996, he had a really bad kidney stone and had an out-of-body experience. And the next morning he was like, I'm going to open up a water store. So he started doing research, found a guy in Ogden who was selling water distillers.
But you got to go deeper into that story.
Yeah.
You don't just get a kidney, wake up the next day. Why? Like, why did that happen? Was it inspiration from God? Like, what's the real story of that?
I would say, and I don't want to put words in his mouth.
Okay.
It was probably inspiration.
Okay.
He was Mormon at the time, and I feel like he was inspired to, help others break away from drinking soda all the time. And he was doing a business, a check advance business, and he was doing really well at that. It just wasn't fulfilling. And, he didn't really like when people didn't pay their loans or their check advance. Oh, we're going to go take their stuff.
Right.
It's like, this business sucks.
Right.
And so he was looking for something more. And I would say he was inspired to do this to help others. And then as he started doing research on tap water and what's in it, it really motivated him to spread the word about, clean water.
So what is the research on that? What's in our tap water?
It's up for debate,
Okay.
but there definitely are, like fluoride. Huberman has a really good podcast about this. There's a lot of things in there you don't want to be drinking.
Okay.
Chlorine in particular really screws up your microbiome. Fluoride, heavy metals, pharmaceutical drugs. Another big one is pesticides, like glyphosate, atrazine or atrazine, I don't know how you say it, and
birth control.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And those, even the pesticides and microplastics too, we were talking about with lower testosterone, is playing a huge factor in, our health, and there's so many things, and the infrastructure is so old. Like, I think the White House just came out recently and said it'd take, close to $1 trillion
Whoa.
to fix the water system as a whole in our country.
Whoa.
And that'd be cool if they did it.
Yeah.
I don't see it happening in the near future.
Let's just print money. Why not?
Let's do it.
We already do it. Let's just print it out for a good cause, right? Instead of just going toward, I don't know, what did people spend their stimulus on? Consumerism?
Crypto. Yeah.
Crypto. Right back into crypto. That's actually a genius if that's what it was. The stimulus went into crypto and then they rug pulled everybody. They got their money back times some. I think they also found the people that were trying to get around the SEC. Have you seen all those violations that are around?
Oh yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
What happened?
That's genius. So the water system you said is going to take $2 trillion. So the infrastructure, and just to get even more elementary when you're talking about that, just thinking about the piping, where the water's coming from, how old it is. Have you ever cleaned your drain pipe out before?
Oh,
disgusting.
Oh man.
If you don't think that those two are synonymous, then I don't know what, we're talking to walls, because of course rust, right? There's so many things that are just going to deteriorate over time. Do you know after the filtration process, do you know how much, have you measured the water in TDS and everything?
Yeah. So our water gets down to 0 parts per million. So it's pure clean water.
Wow.
There's nothing in it. And it's been, sanitized with ultraviolet light and ozone as well. So there's not going to be any bacteria or nasty stuff in there.
So it's not sanitized with chlorine, which will also damage your body. It's sanitized with UV light.
Yep.
Okay. So let's put this in context, because I did this a couple of years back with my my fiance at the time. So we went and we measured municipal water from different states, different counties, and it averaged from 1,400 total dissolved solids to 22,000 total dissolved solids, or maybe it was 1,800, but a wide.
That's big.
So what that means is you're measuring things in your water besides water. So the fact that you just said you have 0, that's ultra pure water.
Yep.
Ultra pure. So when we were talking earlier about the pesticides, the herbicide, insecticide, fungicide, birth control, chlorines, all of these different things to sanitize the water, pharmaceutical drugs, we're not exaggerating, because the water, if you test it and do this, go buy a TDS meter. You can get it on Amazon. Type in TDS meter. It'll cost you $20, maybe less, $14. And pour out your water, right? Your tap water.
Yep.
Pour into a glass. Put that TDS meter, and it'll read the total dissolved solids. If you need that proof of what we're talking about, go do it yourself. And it's ridiculous. Thousands of ingredients in your water besides water. It's comical. I can't say that with a straight face.
It's mind-boggling.
Yeah. So that's fascinating that the company was founded in 1996.
Yep.
So your dad was looking to this in the mid 90s, and then he started the company, right?
Yep.
Let's take it from his timeline, him running it, operating it, to when you picked up. What did you guys learn through those? Because there's probably a certain set of operating knowledge and like just overall knowledge of like how to make your product even better to where you currently are.
One of the things is when we first started, we just did distilled water only, and so it was pure clean water, nothing in it. We didn't talk about minerals. We didn't talk about alkalinity. We had no idea about hydrogen water at that point. And we've really come a long ways as far as our system. Like we just did distilled before. We've actually gotten away from distilled, and we have a 7-stage process now. First step being ion exchange, second step carbon, third step perfect filter reverse osmosis, which is what's going to get out all the really nasty stuff we were talking about. And then it goes to our holding tanks and then comes through a backwash carbon, which gets rid of any taste, odor, or sediment. And then as it's running out to the front, it goes through UV light, and then we do the ozone at night to sanitize as well.
Nice. So why did you guys get away from distilled and then implement this 7-step process?
We got away from distilled because it was really high energy costs, and we felt like transitioning to reverse osmosis was the best bet, especially if we had the other steps in there, like with the UV and the ozone, because that was always our concern with reverse osmosis, is there's still bacteria in the water. And so once we moved 7 years ago to our new location, we made the official switch.
Nice. And where did you guys move from?
Just down the street.
Oh, okay. So
yeah,
it's still the
close.
same city.
Yeah.
Cool. With this ultra purification model, one of the other reasons why your customer base is so, like, why are they so enamored?
I feel like it has to do with Ramon and the culture there.
Okay.
And them really having trust in the quality that we're providing.
Yeah.
And Ramon has been our rock for years, and just like the energy he brings, not only the quality of the water,
right,
but the way he's able to make people feel, and that customer service of him truly caring for each customer.
That's
and we
awesome.
we try and instill that in all our other guys too, and in myself. I try and take a step back sometimes and not get so caught up in the and being real with people.
Right. Right. That's awesome. Let's talk about what happened with your dad wanting to close shop and then why you stepped in.
When my dad moved up to Oregon, he was pretty much just done with the shop at that point. Like he'd been doing it for 20 years at that point, and he was ready to take the next step. And at that point, I was just ready to step in, and we barely made it to the new shop. It was on a shoestring. I didn't have a lot of money at the time. I wasn't able to get out any loans because I didn't have a lot of credit. And so we barely made it into the new shop with, our current setup. And luckily we've just grown like crazy ever since. I think that just has to do with, again, quality, the culture, and, the love that we're really putting into the water.
You decided you wanted to do that. You took the risk. What was the underlying motivation for you? Why that?
I've never wanted to work, your typical 9-to-5 job. I've always wanted to do something where I have the freedom to create my own schedule and to really do something that I feel was a benefit to the community. And with the store, I'm able to really be involved with people, stay connected, get to know customers, and really develop relationships on a deeper level than just like, when you're working anywhere else. It's a lot more fulfilling. And eventually I'd like to take that to the next level and really give back in a deeper way to the people who are really struggling with, not having clean water. My buddy, Spencer Crocker, he's been, his family's awesome. And, they've been going to, he just got back from Nepal, and they helped build a sustainable water system there.
Wow.
And then he was in Africa recently, and it's like he's really just like he's living the dream, you know.
Right.
And seeing the pictures of him with the people and how happy they are, it's so cool.
That is really cool. So what does that look like for you? Like, does that look like a sister, like nonprofit to Water Wellness? Does that look like a charity? Does that just look like an arm, like a service arm for you? What do you have in mind for that bigger vision?
Once we have things dialed in a little more, I would really like to just give a certain percentage to, like, let's say, like a sister company or a nonprofit, or maybe even something we don't do. Like I'm just giving it to like Spencer's company, and they're able to have more funds to, do what they're doing, because they're just killing it.
That's awesome. Yeah. Have you read a book called The Go-Giver?
Yeah, that's a good
Dude,
one.
That's a good one.
So good.
The Law of Stratospheric Success, the service. That's awesome. We were working with you at the store, but that vision to, help bring water to billions of people. Is there like a practical plan in your head that you can do that? The logistics of that?
I feel like the hardest thing standing in the way is getting the good word out there and getting everyone on board with it, and really figuring out what is the most cost effective, best system for the communities that need clean water, and really figuring out what stands in the way. And there is a lot of politics involved there, as far as, I don't want to be conspiratorial. It seems like there's plenty of money out there. And it makes me wonder, like, well, if people have this much money, why aren't these issues being resolved? Not just water, like homelessness, drug addiction, because there's clearly solutions out there, like the Beacon House, like we were talking about, or like Spencer with his water system that he's been doing in small communities. And it's just hard to see that, like, why can't we just get everyone on board? And, there's plenty of money out there to make it happen. And it's just, it makes that, I think the biggest part is going to be getting people to rally behind something like that. And it's probably going to have to be through social media, or, ideally they'd blast it on the big news. Yeah. Like, hey, like, this is how we fix this issue. Yeah. And really putting those solutions into real time.
Right. Yeah, it is tough. It seems like there's a lot of politics. There's so many moving parts, but it seems like fundamentally, like there are simple solutions maybe that are just over complexified by the people aspect, the politics. Yeah. So that's interesting. One of the things that I've observed about water and wellness is not only does it feel more familial, the culture within like the employees and the people you employ, but it's actually literally like you actually employ your family members. Yep. Right. Okay. So that's interesting. I want to dive into that. Because the general rule of thumb is business and family don't mix. What secrets or what have you found that goes against that rule of thumb?
Biggest thing is, all like with my cousins who've worked there and, friends as well. It really comes down to, they've all got good hearts, and they really care about what they're doing there. And in the same way we're talking with the culture, it's like they love helping people, and that's probably the hardest part with it is, sometimes there's a line there where it's like, maybe sometimes they'll get a little lackadaisical and you have to reel them in, but for the most part, they're all just phenomenal.
So what is that? Would you advise, like, would you tell people listening, like, go like start a business and employ your family members? Is that something you'd say?
I would say employ your family members, but at the same time, make sure, like, you trust your family members, because it's not always the best decision. If you really believe in them though, and they've got your back, and nobody's going to care more than your family.
Right. That's true.
And I feel like that's the hardest part for a lot of business owners is they hire people who've got no skin in the game, and they don't really, they like their boss maybe, but they have no real emotional or family connection there where they feel, responsible in a way, for
that's
the
interesting. The way that you said it is actually really logical. Like there's a real reasonable perspective to what you just said, which is your family members have more skin in the game than like a random person, right? in that same vein, though, there's probably a lot of, I mean, there are a lot of examples of where family members take advantage of that, right? And so what do you do when, in your own words, you said when your family member or your employees get more lackadaisical? What do you do to keep them motivated? How do you get them out of that?
Biggest thing is, not try and tear them down, and really just be like, hey, like, how can I help you? How can I improve myself? What are ways we can grow, and really trying to approach it in a way where we can help grow each other, and not so much like, oh, you're fucking up, like, what are you doing?
Right.
And really being more of a like we were talking with gentle pairing, like a gentle leader, and help push them in the right direction. And sometimes that doesn't always work, and you have to give them a little kick in the ass, but for the most part it's pretty good.
Yeah. Isn't that like, there's no one I would rather be showing tough love than somebody that's like, hey bro, I'm gonna see you at Thanksgiving, like, I'm gonna see you at Christmas, like, get your shit together. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm gonna tell mom and dad, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna tell your parents. That's awesome. And that's like something that I'm like trying to navigate more, because there was a part where I was like, I'll never do business with family or friends because I've been burned in the past. And then now it feels like it's coming full circle, because it just feels like in business in general, there's a lot of deceit, there's a lot of lying, dishonesty, all these different things that happen. And I'm realizing, like, it's not necessarily I was burned by family and friends. It was more like, it just wasn't meshing as well. But like where I was really burned was with strangers, they have no skin in the game. They don't care whether they renege on a contract, or, they don't ante up, or they pull money out of the business account and run away. Like it's like, it's not going to affect their life one way or the other.
And it happens. I mean, even in like our family, we've had some stuff where, things don't add up, and, embezzling stuff. And, so
how do you handle those situations?
You handle them with love as best as possible, and then discernment from there on out. Like, okay, well, we know, this happened.
We know this guy's going to embezzle, even though
we love him.
Cousin Johnny.
It's just one of those things where you have to be, on your A game as far as really, and you have to trust your gut. And you can't just be like, oh, he's great, and
right,
everything's gonna work out.
Okay, so what you're telling now is that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, even with family members.
Yeah.
Okay, but it seems like there's a practical way to deal with it. But I like I said, the culture is awesome. People feel that too, and I think you would attest to this. This is the reason that people enjoy coming. And I don't know, everyone was happy when we walked in, when they're like, hey, what's up? What are you guys doing? What's like, can I get a business card? Can I do this? I was like, oh yeah, you guys are real chipper in here. Not your employees, but just like your customers.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like, everyone's just happy. And that's an awesome culture. What are some things, like, are there a couple lessons that you can share with the audience? Like, one doesn't just have a business from 1996 till 2023 without doing certain things in the right way. So what are things that you'd say in the last 7 years that other people could emulate, or other people could learn from you? Because again, the average business fails within 24 months, right? Of launching. So what are certain things that you could maybe one or two things that you could share that have helped you stay in business and thrive in business?
I feel like biggest thing is family. You got, and friends. You got to really be discerning about who you have on your inner circle. And if you have good people to help build you up and help guide you, and you can lean into, like, I'll still call my dad like daily and be like, Dad, what should I do with this? Or I'll ask my wife every night, like, what do you think about this? And, same with really close friends and family, being able to have them as your rock, and not get caught up in, oh, well, this person says this, or, I should do this. And then at the end of the day, you take all that and you do your best, and you bust your balls. And like we're talking about with that older generation, you really just gotta wake up early. Like, I wake up at 5:30 pretty much every day, and, I'll go to the climbing gym, or I'll go play basketball. And I feel like exercise is also a huge factor in the mental health side of running a business. And, the second thing would, you got to really have a good team. You got to have a Ramon who, emulates the culture. You got to have somebody who makes people feel special. More than the water, it's those relationships that we have with customers. That's why we're successful, is because of those relationships.
It seems like water and wellness, it has built-in passion, purpose, right? You're feeding people clean water. Water's the most important substance that we could put in our bodies, arguably, right? So how does one, let's say somebody who's leaning towards launching a business or starting a business, but wants to also do something they're passionate about, not just something that makes money or brings in enough to pay the bills.
Yep.
An impact entrepreneur. Are there things that you could express to them on how to find that, on how to uncover that?
That's a tough one. I feel like you have to do a really big deep dive into yourself and meditate on things that you like to do. And there's some really good books out there that can help you realize what you want to do. And if you can find a solution for something that you're passionate about, that's what business is all about. The hardest part is we stand in our own ways. And even I stand in my own way a lot of the times with just self-doubt, negative self-talk, and really stepping out of our own way. Lehigh posted something the other day that was saying that same thing. And it was basically like somebody,
Who's Lehigh?
Lehigh's Dominguez. He's
okay. Gotcha. Yeah. You mentioned him.
Badass fighter that comes in the store.
Okay.
Just awesome guy. And he posted how 50% of people with less confidence are out there doing it. And, you're still just, too scared to go out there. And same thing like Opie's tell me, if you don't ask, you'll never know.
Right.
You got to really put yourself out there and not be afraid to get told no.
Yeah. Fear of rejection. So how did you handle the fear of rejection?
I really lean into exercise and my family, hanging out more with my kids and doing my best not to get caught up in the stress of it all, and really just trying to live in the moment, do the best that I can, even like just do your best, forget the rest kind of, like you just gotta do your best.
That's awesome. Is there anything you want to say to your wife? Is there any gratitude or any roses you want to give to her? I think a lot of people don't realize when you come from a background of entrepreneurship with your parents, now you're an entrepreneur, how much sacrifice and how much support you actually get from your significant other, from your kids, even if that's just them, being aware that dad's at work, right? Or doing stuff. So,
well, my wife's my best friend. She's always been there for me. We've had a deep connection ever since we ever met. And she's literally my, like the cliche, my better half. She's able to really reel me in on certain things. And she's the real reason I'm even into health. Is she had thyroid cancer when she was 19.
Whoa.
And had to have her thyroid removed. And since then, it's put us both into a deep dive into health.
Wow.
And she knows way more about health than I do. And I'm learning from her every day. And she's always sending me stuff and keeping me up to speed, not only with health, with our children too. She goes to the next level as far as parenting. It's definitely a learning process, but she's been able to help me be a way better dad, better husband, and a better business owner.
Talking about her overcoming cancer, her influence on health, it seems like Water Wellness Walter wouldn't be where he's at without his significant other.
No way, Jose.
Wow.
Yep.
How did you get so intertwined with the MMA community?
Justin Sloan introduced us to the pit and a bunch of fighters and gyms. It's been amazing to see it progress over the years. Like, we started out with a few people and, it's just grown like wildfire in, particularly this year. And it's so cool to be a part of that community. They're all motivational guys, and inspirational. They all work so hard. Like, not only are they doing MMA, they work full time. They've got families and athletes in general. I mean, it's crazy how hard these people grind.
Yeah.
And they're really they're the nicest people too. Like, even though they kick your ass, it's like, they're so cool. Like, and they're always just so genuine, and it's so fun to go watch them fight. And it's like, makes you feel so good.
I was invited to the Fierce Fighting championship, like one of their fights, and you guys have sponsored that fight.
Yep.
And when I heard that, before I went there, I was like, oh, that's cool. Like you got a couple flyers. Like I didn't really understand what it meant. And when I showed up, I swear to God, that arena was not the Maverick Center. It was the Water Wellness Center, because you were your company's branding was everywhere. It was on the LED screens. It was on the, what are those? The padding within the cage. It was in the middle of the ring. Like I was like, wow, you have really entrenched yourself in that community. Now, if you could choose, is it just pure MMA, or would you go to every sport? Would it be water and wellness intertwined with MMA, water and wellness intertwined with the NBA? You know what I mean? Like, would it be all of the sports, or are you guys just focused on the MMA?
I love MMA, and that's our number one right now. I still would love to see us be with all the major, at least with all the local major sports teams. Like I've always been a big Jazz fan. Love the Utes. Still be cool to get BYU, but
Yeah. So collegiate athletes, everything.
Yeah.
Hell yes. Water and wellness is going to start branching off into because everyone needs it. You know what I mean? It's like everyone is a consumer of water.
Yep.
I don't know anyone that doesn't drink water, so it makes sense. Is there a world that you license your model out to other company? Like, are you guys doing something unique in this world of water filtration? Like, it seems like 7 steps is a lot.
Yeah.
Is there a way that you guys can get a proprietary process on that?
I'd love to franchise it. And, the hard part with it is just, if you do franchise it, how do you keep the culture?
Right.
And you have to be really selective in who you're picking to own them, and making sure that they have the same core values, and that they're going to bring on the right people in order to keep that intact.
100%. And that's exactly the problem with franchise models. Like, how do you keep it feeling like it's not a franchise?
Yep.
Yeah. Is there a way that you can patent the process? Have you guys looked into like utility patents, or the whole 7 filtration patent? Like, is there a way to patent that?
I wouldn't, for us personally, I wouldn't say there is.
Okay.
The company that installed our system is Pacific Water. They're badass. Like, if you ever need like commercial water systems, they're top notch. Like, they make the best systems in town.
Okay.
And they're like next level.
Okay.
I feel like the technology though, so
next level compared to water wellness, or even another level?
As far as like big commercial water systems go.
Okay.
Like they do all the refineries, they do all the big universities, hospitals.
Oh, okay.
And they're doing like, they don't do residential. They sell to residential plumbing companies, but they do like commercial projects where like, ours, we can make like 7 gallons a minute. We're close to needing to be able to do, well, we do need it to be able to do double that here soon, just because it's hard to keep up with water consumption.
Wow.
But like the one they do at a refinery can do like thousands of gallons of clean water in an hour.
Wow.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Is
there a climate impact? Do you guys pay extra taxes because of how much water you guys go through? You know what I mean? Like, is there some sort of climate impact to what you're doing?
At this point, no.
Okay.
There's been, rumblings about a tiered water structure here at some point, at least in Salt Lake, like especially for like grass lawns and,
right.
They're really wanting to limit water consumption. And that I feel like is coming full circle. There's a movie like Blue Gold, like we talked about last time, and the next big wars aren't going to be fought over what they're usually fought over. It's going to be fought over water, because, we're running, and until we fix the problems that are happening with Mother Earth's natural hydrological system, and, repair those things, we're gonna have a real struggle for water.
What's the timeline for
that? That's a tough one. I don't want to be, it's even like when they were saying, New York's going to be underwater at, this time. It's hard to put a time, and even, let's say that, we don't even run out of water. It's just that like the quality of it, even with all of it, it's like, we don't want to, it's just everything's so polluted, and that's, I think the biggest thing is we need to shift as not only a country, but the whole world, into really mindful of everything we're doing for the environment, for our kids, for our family, and taking the necessary steps to get to that point, to change our fundamental structures. you know, with water, air, food, our mental health.
Yeah.
It's going to be I feel like I do believe in people though. I truly do. And I feel like, you know, there's a lot of doomsdayers out there like, oh, we're going to this and we're going to that. And at the end of the day, I feel like as a whole, for humanity, we're going to be able to step up and take care of all the issues at hand if we can just rally together and forget about all the crap in between.
Yeah.
And just love each other and truly, you know, do the things necessary.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think it's important to have that positive outlook.
Yeah.
Regardless of how surmounting the odds are, right? Like how insurmountable. You're like, oh my God, there's so much that's got to be done.
Especially with kids.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what do I even have kids for? Like shit, they're
right.
They're screwed.
Yeah, that's literally there are quite literally human beings that are like, I'm not having kids because I don't want them to be a part of this world because of all the things that seem like are going wrong.
Yep.
Walter, where can people find you on social media?
Social media, Water Wellness SLC on Instagram and Facebook. Yeah, TikTok SLC Water
Reverse.
Wellness. Yeah. Switching it up. Or maybe I can brain fart and maybe it is SLC Water Wellness for the Instagram too.
I don't know. Yeah. One of the two. So, but either way.
Website, waterwellnesscenter.com. Just give us a call too. We'd love to talk.
That was another episode of the Adaptive Leaders Podcast. If we brought you any value today, like, subscribe, and share the episode. Also, one ask that I'm going to have on my end is if you guys could go rate and review the podcast, it'll help us get to a broader audience. Last week's episode, we were catapulted into the top 100 podcasts in multiple countries across the world, which is wild. We're now out of most of those top 100s. But if you guys can go like, subscribe, and rate and review the podcast, we can get back there. All right, guys. Till next time. Peace.